best way for me to start is, first of all, I come with the assumption that Deep has asked me to come to share what we've come up with in the way of developing what we call urban health. Yes, she has it up there. Urban, of course, being a play on words here, of focusing on community. And in order to do that, I guess I need to give a little bit of background about myself. I became a social worker in the 60s in the city of Richmond, California. And I had graduated from Berkeley, which at the time was, of course, in great turmoil with the free speech movement and whatever and all. I wasn't directly involved in that. I wasn't a joiner really, but I think it certainly did have an impact on the way I looked at things. But when I became a social worker and went to a community where, in ostensibly one city, there were the white people who lived up on the hill. If any of you know Richmond, if you've gone on Richmond Ridge, you at least know where it is, right? And then there are the flatlands where the people of color lived and continue to live, primarily African American and now more and more Latino Pacific Islanders. And the interesting thing about that, interesting is one way of putting it, but is that although it was one city and everybody paid taxes and the idea was that the city was to help everyone, a certainly disproportionate amount of resources went to the hill area, and the flatlands received very little in terms of resources, and that included the way the streets were kept and health care, public health nurses in the schools and whatever, that the flatlands received very little and the hill folks received a lot. And that was, of course, I was working with the people who lived in the flatlands, of course, because I was a social worker working for the county, right? And when I approached county or city folks around that issue, it was everybody was, and it was true the way they felt. Well, there's nothing I can do about it. That's the way it is. And to add insult to injury, because there was and continues to be so much discrimination, race and ethnically, the folks who lived on the flatlands had no choices where to live. So not only were the resources lower, but fewer, but they paid higher rents. And in that process, very painful, one of those ontological experiences of which hopefully we keep having more and more of them, where we change our worldview. I felt that it was clear to me that these inequities were built into our system, and that the very roots of the way that we deliver resources and have resources shared in our community is flawed at its core in some kind of way. Needed, and I would say, argue, continues to be a need to be revisited. So I committed myself at that point, a very long time ago, to the concept of radical social change, and I continue to use that word. Radical meaning, as Saul Alinsky used in Chicago many years ago, going to the root of the problem, trying to make root changes in society's institutions rather than simply, or in addition to, I should say, providing social services and the kinds of things that people need, and making sure that they're more equitably distributed. And in that process over these years, and I will not take you on a step-by-step through the last 40 years, but I felt that I needed to have more of an understanding around the way institutions worked if I were going to take them on, right? And I very much believed in the idea that economics, I'm not a Marxist, although I can kind of be a Marxist, because I do believe that money is at the core of a lot of the distribution of wealth, and capitalism has a great deal to do with the way inequities are perpetuated. So I'm not a Marxist in the sense that, well, revolution is okay, not violent revolution, let's leave it at that. But the idea that economics is at least essential, if not primary. Looking at our economic system, I felt that I needed to know what I was talking about, because the world is filled with all of us do-gooders, right? But we don't get taken seriously if we can't, if we don't know what we're talking about. So my educational path, it was kind of bifurcated of doing as many community social change things as I could do, as well as educating myself. So in that process, I went to law school. I got an MBA. Let's see, I have too many of those. It's a little bit of an addiction too, I have to admit, but I got a master's in religion and society, and of course, my very favorite, the one that I went to because I really wanted to know, was, of course, going through Chinese medicine school. Yay! My goal, and I see as a white person, I'm clear for myself anyway that my role primarily is in addressing the majority population.
That's me. Sorry, I was afraid you might call if you got lost.
You wanted me to do a little bit of routine, you know?
Yeah.
That's good.
You're multi-talented.
Bring a little bit of Supremes in here. And
You silly. Almost unplugged your computer, John. Sorry.
But going just back to the point that although many of the burdens of the world, or in this country in particular, are visited upon people of color, it is primarily the white community that holds the resources. So, and as a white person, I didn't and don't see my job as organizing people of color. Why would I know enough to do that if I don't? But certainly people without resources know what they need and want much better than the folks who hold the resources. So for many years, I continued my process in trying to learn about institutions, how to work with them, tweak them, whatever, to come up with new models. And I moved in 1988 to the city of East Palo Alto, where I've lived since that time. And East Palo Alto, for those of you who don't know it, is a community, primarily community of color, that was unincorporated in San Mateo County until 1983. And during the 50s, it had gone through a major change of being an all-white community, and certainly not overnight, but very close to that, with the real estate people driving the action. The city welcomed and became a community primarily of African Americans, people who had left the South during the war and needed places to live and had been discriminated against in their housing, but there was a market for it because they had made money during the war. So it became like 90% African American in a very quick period of time. Very dynamic, very interesting, wonderful. I loved the city of East Palo Alto. But again, I had chosen not to move there because I lived in Palo Alto and I saw my work working with white people. But there was a moment in time, because my own belief is that whatever resources I have in whatever way, personally or monetary or whatever, that I see them as what I hold in trust for my work in trying to make the world a better place. And I realized that my little lot in Palo Alto this was the original inflation. Of course, it probably, who knows about real estate market now. But anyway, at the time, it had inflated in value significantly. And I thought, this is not really a very efficient way of using resources to sit in a single-family residence that's worth, at that point, hundreds of thousands of dollars, probably a million at this point, that little lot in Palo Alto. And I realized that I could sell it and buy an acre of land in East Palo Alto with greenhouses on it. So, and I had many friends in East Palo Alto, and I decided at that point it was a good way to go.